All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of the Sports Muse podcast. I am joined today again by Jimmy Smith. Jimmy, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Hanging in there. One day at a time like everybody else.
That's all we can do right now. And guys, before we start breaking down UFC 251, make sure you smash that subscribe button where Jimmy Smith's going to come to your house and put you in a Peruvian necktie. That's a fact.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. I love it. I love it. It's one of my favorites, man.
That's what yeah. So, I mean, I don't want you to get hurt. You know,
no,
Jimmy, so.
I don't want that either, guys. So hit subscribe. Come
on. So you know what? We're going to stick to the main card, but there is one fight I want to talk about that's not on the main card, and that is the prelims main event, which is Volkan Oezdemir versus Jiri.
Say it.
I don't know.
Come on.
I have no idea. You said it off the air, and I was like, yeah, I can't say that name.
Jiri Prochanzka.
Oh, yeah, what he said.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about that fight, man? I'm excited for that one.
No, it's going to be a good one. I called Jiri. The reason I know how to say the name is he fought in Ryzen several times. Well, the first time he fought against King Mo was a Grand Prix, and Spike went over there, and it was called Breakfast with Fedor, kind of a special they did. So I called it live in Japan. So he's gotten way better since then. But
yes,
he has really kind of if you watch him, he's tall, but he has like a loose kind of striking style. He lets his hands float a lot. He has this weird low stance. He does have power, but it can take him a while sometimes to warm up in fights. And the issue to me, if you're an old school MMA fan, and a lot of people like this, like, oh man, Pride was the best. Pride. One thing about Pride's matchmaking is there were some goofy matchups. If you remember, Japanese MMA, they love these kind of like freak show matches and weight classes where suggestions. And Prochanzka, a lot of his fights are like that. His last one was CB Dalloway. It was a puffed up 185er. Brandon Halsey, puffed up 185er. He's fought some guys who were kind of over the hill, Kazuki Fujita, stuff like really weird. Like, yeah, he has a win over King Mo. That's great. Finished him in the rematch last time they fought. He has some decent wins, but if you notice, it's kind of all over the place. Like the weight classes he would fight in, and these guys would go up to 205 to fight him. He's a big 205er. So he didn't have to take on the Volkan Oezdemir level talent. Volkan has fought some of the best in the world in order to get there. And short time, he has that name for a reason. He tends to start very, very quickly. And with that loose style, low hands, he can be really vulnerable to somebody who just hits the gas early. And that's how Oezdemir fights.
And that's a great point because, yeah, if you've watched any of his fights, man, he just lets his hands down by his waist and loose is a great way to describe his fighting style. I mean, you see, and he's very – I don't know. He doesn't have like a single rhythm. You know, you see him some fights come out pretty hot. You see him like the first time he fought King Mo, he came out striking. And then the second time he fought King Mo, he's very like hesitant, you know, maybe because he got KO'd the first time around, but he's just very kind of all over the map. So he's a tough guy to get a real good beat on, but he is a very loose striker, which, you know, Volkan Oezdemir is not the guy you really want to play with in the boxing department with your hands down.
And that's another thing when you've had his level of talent, you know, like I'm not calling CB Dalloway a bad fighter, but he's not a knockout guy at 85, let alone 205. Brandon Halsey, not a bad fighter, not a knockout guy at 185, let alone 205. So you can take those risks, and it's not going to bite you in the ass like it will against a Volkan Oezdemir or DC or guys John Jones, who can put power behind a punch. You come out there kind of loosey-goosey, you take one, that's it for you. Your night's over. Yeah. And so the problem is Prochanzka in Japan has fought a lot of guys who were good, but didn't have the power to make him pay for his unorthodox style. And I think Oezdemir can make him pay for that. And also, those octagon jitters are a real thing. And Oezdemir has gotten all the way to the top in the UFC.
Yeah, and honestly, I was talking about this last night, and it's exactly that, man. This is about the hardest matchup he could have for an opening UFC fight. It's not great for him, but I'm excited, man. It's gonna be a great fight to lead into the main card.
Yeah.
Both those guys have knockout power, so I'm excited for that one as a fight fan. Which brings us to the main card, and we got kicking off the main card, Paige VanZant versus Amanda Ribas. Man, this one's kind of an interesting one because just looking at the odds, you know, Paige VanZant was this, you know, fan favorite for a while. We haven't seen her because she's, you know, had some arm injuries, but she's a 5-1 dog, which is crazy. You know, Ribas, I think, is the more talented fighter, but when you get to women's MMA, a 5-1 dog that's kind of crazy. I don't know. That seems really wide to me. I wouldn't pick Paige VanZant, you know what I mean, if we're doing a pick pool. But those odds do seem kind of off to me. What are you thinking?
Here's the issue. There's a reason they're trying to get you to bet on Paige VanZant. Now, if you know study statistics, you know why odds work is they're trying to get it even. So they make money on the juice or the VIG or whatever you want to call it that you pay to bet, but they want it 50-50. They want just as many people betting on one side as the other. So they're really trying to load Paige VanZant at 5-1 odds to get people to, to take a risk on her with a little bit of money. Ribas, as you said, is just the better fighter, right? She's fought better talent. She's beaten better talent. Last time we saw Paige VanZant in the octagon, yes, she won over Rachel Ostovich. She was losing that fight the entire first round. She was getting beat up. She was getting taken down pretty much at will. Not a lot. I wasn't impressed with her ground game at the time, that first round. And then what happened? Ostovich tried to take her back, got too high in the ride, got flipped over, and Paige VanZant took advantage like a veteran. She found that armbar, but it took a mistake from Rachel Ostovich to let her back into the fight. Other than that, I mean, that's one win in the last 3 fights as well. She's lost 3 out of her last 5.
Yep.
But it's also, I don't like I made more money doing this, and that than fighting. Okay, I'm not saying you're wrong. In fact, she's probably right. And if that gets some people to reassess how much fighters make, great. It does make you wonder how much she's putting into a career that pays her the third of her income, right? If she's making a great living on Instagram, Dancing with the Stars or whatever, great. Then why are you going to a gym, getting your face punched in a time when going to a gym period is a risk, by the way, especially here in South Florida? So it just makes me wonder where her head is, because Ribas just wants to win. And if you look her fight against Mackenzie Dern, not only is great striking, excellent ground defense, smart. I loved her fight IQ, great range. She was keeping Mackenzie Dern at distance the entire time, never allowed her to bait her into some weird position that could end up on the ground. She stuck to the game plan, very, very high fight IQ. And I think she's a contender at 115 in a division that has a lot of contenders. I put Ribas in that contender air for sure.
No, I completely agree with what you're saying right there. And you are right. They're trying to get that 50-50 split. That's why they have the wide odds. It's kind of weird. If you would have said that 3 years ago, Paige VanZant was going to be a 5-1 dog in 3 years, you'd been like, no way, you know what I mean? Because the UFC was pushing her so hard. They were giving her favorable matchups. But Ribas is the real deal. And I think this is a good fight for her because, if Mackenzie Dern didn't really get the fans' attention, a household name like a Paige VanZant, beating up her, I think is going to get her a little bit more hype behind her. And I think it's a smart, matchmaking, which gets us to the next fight, man. And these top 4 fights, I mean, I can argue these might be the best top 4 fights ever on a card, right? I mean, could you argue
It's
that?
toward the top. It's toward the top for sure. Very, very stacked.
I mean, I love it. So it's Thug Rose versus Jessica Andrade. It's the rematch. Last time, Rose was the champion coming in. Andrade came in, got beat up pretty bad that first round. You saw Rose was the superior striker. Her hands were on fire that night. Her counter game, she was fighting long. She was doing a good job of, fending off the takedowns. And then, she tried to hit a Kimura and to reverse the slam and got spiked on her head and put her clean out. You know what I mean? And that's part of fighting. You know what I mean? You can dominate a fight and it takes one slam, one strike, and your night's over with. It's a good one, man. And even though Rose was piecing her up the first time around, Andrade is something, she's in the fight. I don't care if it's 14 and a half minutes in and she's getting punched in the face. She throws hard. She's in your face. She won't back down. And this is going to be an awesome fight. It's going to be action-packed. It's going to be a scrap. What are you thinking?
And by her own admission, her head wasn't in it. Rose was like, I didn't want to be champ. It was a lot of pressure. And I don't think her head was in that fight and she was piecing her up. That's the interesting thing to me.
Crazy.
The X factor here with this one is, once again, the headspace, because she's lost a couple of coated. She took some time off. Does she see this as a restart? Does she see this as a sanctuary? A lot of people with fighting, whole world can be burning down. All I have to worry about is this fight in the octagon. It can be kind of like a way to get away from all these problems. If they follow her into the octagon mentally, she's an interesting cat, right? I mean, we've seen some, your heads kind of can be all over the place, but when she's focused, man, she's one of, if not the best in the world. So it's one of those things where if she's mentally on point, I think it's Rose's to lose. Andrade, as you said, she's physically vicious. She's strong, great takedown. You saw the slam. She has real power, but technically and tactically, I think Rose can just do more and kind of has her number. Now, if you're mentally not in it and things aren't clicking 100%, you'll let a physical monster like Andrade into a fight. If you stay tactically sound, it's hard for somebody with physical abilities of Andrade to get into the fight, right? She's got to find a way in through punches. She has to be able to slip something. She has to be able to commit to a takedown. If you can keep her on the outside enough, I don't think that's ever going to be an issue. But if Rose lets up or has a moment where she doubts herself or there's some kind of problem, you let a beast like that in, she could have issues. So I think it boils down to the mental side of it. Because I think tactically, physically, I think Rose Namajunas has everything it takes.
And I think the odds reflect that. I agree with that. Rose is at minus 210. Andrade, even though she won the first fight, she's the dog at plus 170. Those seem appropriate odds to me,
Yeah,
I think. Which brings us to our first of 3 title fights, man. I've kind of gone back and forth on this one. It's Petr Yan versus Jose Aldo. What do you think? I'll let you start this one off.
All right, here's my thought on this is, which I don't think enough people are talking about. A significantly diminished Jose Aldo is still a threat. Think of all the fights in all the years. Usually when we see someone go down in MMA, it's like Anderson Silva. They kind of go off a cliff. Chuck Liddell, they kind of go off a cliff. Jose Aldo is I would say 80% of what he used to be, and he's still a monster. That's still enough to be amongst the elite at 135. Now, I thought he won his last fight against Marlon Moraes. Very, very close fight. But he's still in it, right? He's still amongst the elite. That's an incredible accomplishment at his age with the number, even when he was at 145 with Max Holloway, those were wars. He just, was on the wrong side against a younger guy who could put more behind a punch, but he was in those fights. That's an incredible accomplishment at this point in his career, especially the way he fought, explosive, powerful, dynamic, accurate. That usually by this age isn't there anymore. So one thing is a significantly diminished Jose Aldo is still a factor in this division. The problem is a problem that has dogged him his entire career. If you go back and look at him in his prime, he in a 5-round fights, he would generally win the first 3 rounds and coast the last 2 rounds. He had trouble because he was so explosive and dynamic and all this stuff. He would beat the piss out of guys. And if he couldn't knock you out, which sometimes he did, in the first 3 rounds, he tended to kind of slow down in rounds 4 or 5. Look at the Frankie Edgar fights. Look at Mark Hominick even.
Hominick was the one I was going to say.
Yeah, Hominick was number 2. He would, beat him up and then kind of coast at the end. We're seeing as he's getting older, he's having trouble in 3-round fights keeping the pressure on. Well, he'll explode, have these moments where he's explosive and throwing a lot of punches and super accurate, and then he's got to back off and he's letting fighters back into rounds. I thought that was what happened against Marlon Moraes. He just couldn't string together enough minutes and enough rounds to comfortably win fights. Now, it used to be he could be Jose Aldo for 3-4 rounds, and then it's too late. Trying to catch up with him, you didn't have time, and your legs were beat to shit. You couldn't really follow him around anywhere. So he doesn't quite have that anymore. He doesn't have the power to hurt somebody so bad that they can't come back late. And also, he's not stringing whole rounds together. It's like he's Jose Aldo for about half a round, and then he's still pretty good for the other half, but he lets fighters back into it. I think that really bites him. It's a 5-round fight. Nobody is talking about, too. At 6 a.m. today was 96 degrees in Abu Dhabi. Okay, so it's going to be hot as balls out there. It's going to be on a beach outside, which means any AC you have is pretty useless. These fighters are going to be walking right around, 8 in the morning. Sun's starting to really be a factor. Guys with good gas, I think, are going to have problems, let alone somebody like Jose Aldo who's had trouble putting it together throughout his career. When you look at Petr Yan, the word that always springs out to me is just solid. He's big at 135, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, keeps his right hand glued, throws nice solid combinations, doesn't give you a lot of room. He's kind of a bully. We saw against Jimmy Rivera, who likes to take the center and be the bully. He's a squat, strong kind of guy. He kind of pushed him around a bit. Sure. And yeah, when we look at the Jose Aldo, not Jose Aldo, the Uriah Faber fight, and I happen to agree with Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain went, yeah, he's supposed to do that. I'm sorry. Uriah Faber was retired. He's 41 years old. He was supposed to beat up an old Uriah Faber, but it's like he did that, and everyone, whoa, oh my God,
sure.
Petr Yan. But he generally doesn't do that. He generally wins by decision. That's how he beat John Dodson. That's how he beat Jimmy Rivera. Against tough guys, he generally goes the distance. It's just he doesn't let you in, dude. Yeah. He's solid, hands high, chin down, doesn't give you a lot of offensive opportunities. He's big, and he claims the whole octagon. He makes that octagon very, very small with his footwork. So it's exactly the kind of fight where a diminished Jose Aldo doesn't quite have the power to back off somebody like Petr Yan anymore. I mean, he might. It's possible. But This isn't a young Jose Aldo where, the dude breathes fire and would hit you with a flying knee from across the octagon. It's not that guy anymore. So I think he's going to have trouble with that physical pressure for a 5-round fight. I got to go with Jan on that one.
And I definitely understand what you're saying, and I completely agree. First off, how crazy is it Jose Aldo is only 33 years old? Like, I feel like Jose Aldo, WEC champion. I mean, he is an OG. He's like the 145 guy.
It's the mileage.
Exactly.
It's the
A
mileage.
lot of times in MMA, it's not the age. Like, you look at Max Holloway, which we'll talk about next. He's 28, which is young, but he's been fighting since he was 18. So he has 10 years of mileage on his body. Yeah. So it's interesting. But if you look at Jose Aldo's last 6 fights, he's 2-4, and you go, oh man, he's really lost it. But you look at the 4 he's lost to: Holloway twice, Volkanovski, and Marlon Moraes. Those are all as good as it gets.
Elite of the elite. Doesn't get any better. Right.
Absolutely. And like you said, most people think he beat Moraes. Yeah. So it kind of comes down to, Petr Yan. The reason I think Aldo has a little bit more of a chance than what some people are thinking is he is a little bit more of a squattier fighter. He's a little shorter. He has a 3-inch reach disadvantage, and he does his power's good, and he'll take one to give one. Yeah, he does have high hands, but sometimes he'll jump in with a lunging hook, and man, Aldo throwing a 1-2 right down the pipe could ruin anybody's night. So it depends on what Aldo's game plan is. Is Aldo trying to beat him in a 5-round match? That's not going to work, I don't think. I don't think he was never made for someone who's going to try to win a 48-47 decision. Like you said, he would gas you up for 3 rounds, 4 rounds. 5th one, he was like, listen, I'm just not going to get knocked out. I don't really care if you win. But if he comes out there, and we saw it with Chad Mendes. When Aldo gets touched a little bit, he changes, man. He bites down on his mouthpiece, and he becomes a madman. We saw it with Max Holloway, too. He gets touched up a little bit, and he goes, all right, let's go. I'm going to answer back. If that Jose Aldo comes out and starts getting touched up a little bit, he has a chance to shock everybody with like a spark knockout. If this fight goes past, 3 rounds, you got to favor Jan. Aldo's not going to have much of a chance. And Jan has better movement, and what gives me hesitation is Aldo didn't throw a single leg kick against Moraes. And even before Moraes, he's kind of phased out of that part of his career. And I don't know exactly that reason, because, arguably the best leg kicker of all time. Him, Barboza, Justin Gaethje, just electric leg kickers, right? And Aldo's just
Douglas Lima.
Lima, yeah, that's a great one.
But the issue here, from what I've heard from people who are closer to his camp, he had an automobile accident in Brazil a few years ago, and I don't know exactly what happened. It was some kind of scooter accident. Since then, he doesn't throw a lot of leg kicks. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some injury, some hip problem, some knee problem that prevented him from throwing leg kicks after that accident. Because I was talking to people who were near his camp, like, yeah, since that accident, he really doesn't do that much. Could be some lingering injury that will never go away. That forced him to change his style.
That's a really interesting one. I didn't hear that. The other thing that kind of gives you a little bit of hesitation is he started off slow against Moraes, and Moraes is electric fast. He's about the fastest, strongest 35er in the world. He looked a little slow, and he started off, we saw Moraes clip him about 3 seconds into the fight with a high kick. Was he kind of trying to get his bearings back? Because if he tries to wait around a little bit too much against, Jan, it's not going to favor well for him. So Jan's the favorite at -250. Aldo's pretty much a 2-1 dog. I think everybody loves Jose Aldo. He's a tough guy to root against. Like I said, he's an OG. So it'd be cool to see Aldo do it one more time, get on the mountaintop. But again, this is perfect matchmaking, because you're taking a relatively unknown in Jan. And if he beats Aldo, you're like, oh, he's legit, as compared to he beats Aljamain Sterling, who's, I think Sterling's should be, in this title fight. If he beats Sterling, you're going, well, I don't know who this guy is. But for the casual MMA fan, they see he beats Jose Aldo, and you're like, oh, he's legit. So they're trying to cement their next guy at 35.
That's going to be a theme with this card, in my opinion.
Yes.
And I will talk about that with the main event, but there's a real disconnect between what people like you and me who follow fighting all the time, and it's kind of our job, and the casual fan. The way they see this card is very, very different.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our co-main, which I'm really excited for. This one, I think this one feels like it's the hardest fight for me to call. I'm just I don't know. It's going to be a good one. So we got Alexander Volkanovski, who is the champion, against the former champion, Max Holloway. Whew, this is a good one, man. I don't know. So the biggest thing to me, and I'll see what you think about this, is it comes to me that Volkanovski took the first 3 rounds, right? Or at least they seemed to go his way. He was always landing. He was countering up Holloway like a fraction of a second before Holloway could land it. But the thing is, he chewed up his legs, right? Holloway has never been a great leg kick checker, and whether he's never taken it too seriously because his pressure game always wears you out. But he's never really checked a ton of leg kicks, and he got his legs chewed up, and he had to switch from orthodox to southpaw. Okay, in the 4th and 5th round, he switched back to orthodox, and then he started landing a little bit more. Now, is that because instead of being slightly slower than Volkanovski in southpaw, now he became slightly faster in orthodox? You know, that's why he was landing, or did Volkanovski take a little bit off the gas because he knew he was up on the scorecards? I don't know that. That's to me, that's the biggest question that's going through my mind for this fight. What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, that's a very, very true. A big X factor to me is their prep was all over the board. Holloway said, I didn't spar at all. My gym really hasn't been open. Volkanovski talked about his coach talking to him on Zoom and talking him through workouts and stuff. Who's more physically prepared? Look, it's probably going to be a long, difficult, grueling fight. I just talked about the weather. Okay, so the first kind of X factor that makes this fight, to me, gambler's death. I wouldn't touch this fight with a 10-foot pole if I were putting money on something, is the fact that we don't know how well physically prepared they are. And it's going to be one of those bring a lunch. It's going to be a long fight. It's going to be really grueling and difficult. Number two, Volkanovski talked a lot about, I want to knock Holloway out. I think it's the dumbest strategy you could possibly take. Oh, yeah. He won the first fight by not trying to knock him out. He stayed composed. He stayed disciplined. He didn't allow this, let's Hawaiian style brawl and throw hands. He didn't allow Holloway to fight his kind of fight. End of story. He just didn't allow the brawl that he wanted. If he goes out there going, I'm going to knock this guy out, and falls right into that trap, that's the dumbest thing he could do. And I'm hoping it's pre-fight bravado, just fighters talk and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to do this, and that. And they don't really do it. He won by being strategical. He won by being disciplined. He won by sticking to the game plan. He does that again, I think he can win again. If he goes out there and decides to, hey, let's see who can brawl harder, that plays right into his game. Be stupid. So there's so many X factors in this fight. That's what makes it interesting. If Volkanovski loses, I don't want to say he's a flash in the pan, but that's what a lot of fans will think. Sure. That Holloway's really the man, and this was just a road bump on Holloway's journey. If Volkanovski beats him, he's cemented himself as a top 145 pounder in the world. So the stakes are also very, very high. That means a lot of pressure. Who deals with it better? Holloway's more used to this kind of environment.
And that's a great point, man. And speaking of how legit these guys are, Volkanovski hasn't lost in the past 7 years, and Holloway is 14-2 in his last 16. I mean, these dudes are the two best 45ers in the world. It's going to be an absolute barn burner. So you're picking Max Holloway?
No, I gotta go with Volkanovski, but I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. I'm going with Volkanovski. I'm saying what I believe that what he's saying before this fight is just pre-fight talk. I think he got where he got not being stupid. And I think he won't be stupid again. And Holloway's going to have to find a way in, which has never really been his strong suit. What I mean by when he points to the ground, guys just stand there and brawl. He was with guys that he could initiate this kind of fight, and they were more than happy to engage him. So it's been one of those things where he's got to figure out how to open the door up. He was all able to just kick it in before, and now he's got to pick the lock, right?
That's true.
You got to think a little bit more strategically, right? And that's just never been his strong suit. I'm not saying he's strategically a stupid guy. I'm saying every time he wanted to brawl, guys were more than willing to engage him.
And the weather thing I didn't think about until you mentioned it earlier, but you wonder with Volkanovski being the stockier fighter, a little bit more muscle on him, you wonder if it's going to drain him a little bit quicker instead of maybe him taking the first 3 rounds, he only takes the first 2. But this seems like one of those razor close decisions, like you said. It's a tough one to bet on.
And Holloway's a volume guy. Yeah. He throws a lot. Try doing that in 102-degree weather. Throwing, I don't know if you're a boxing fan, but a guy like, Paul Williams. If you remember Paul Williams, he would throw 150 punches around. Julio Cesar Chavez, Meldrick Taylor. These guys would throw so many punches. But what happens? He wears you down. You wear down, they wear down. It's hard to do that in 102-degree weather. So Holloway, I don't think gets a pass in terms of if it's hot. Sure. He's used to throwing a lot of punches. He's not used to dropping guys with one shot. He's used to overwhelming them. Well, round 3, and it feels like you're breathing sand because it's so hot. You know that feeling. And what I don't want to see, and I may be belaboring this a little too much for your fans, but I don't want to see a main card where we're seeing guys in the 4th round oh, my God, if only they if only this weren't taking place in a
Sure.
freaking oven,
Yeah.
maybe we'd get better fights. I don't want, that would really bother me. If like, oh man, Holloway had him and then just heat-wise, he just ran out of gas. I would hate to see that with, as you said, one of the best cards in UFC history. I would hate to see the weather kind of be the story.
That's a great, fantastic point.
People look, I was doing ESPN last week and they had a lead in about Fight Island, right? And what did it show? It showed Gilbert Burns on the beach, right? Like, and it showed Kamaru Usman running down the sand. I go, guys, you can't get on the sand. It's 100. Last week it was 108 degrees in Abu Dhabi. 100. They're not sitting there with a Mai Tai like this. It's not the Bahamas. It's friggin' hot. I mean, you can't go outside hot. You know what I mean? Like, you still outside, it's like burning. It's the Lost Boys, right? You're going to burst into flames. So people have this idea that, Fight Island and sun and margaritas. Like, dude, this is not South Beach. This is 108 degrees in the sun, So the impact it might have might be tremendous.
Like I said, that is an absolute fantastic point. I'm definitely going to have to take that in consideration because, like I said, I'm a degenerate gambler, so I'm going to throw down a little bit of money.
The next time I do your podcast, and all that stuff behind you sold. You had to hawk all of it. You had no helmets there. Your ward thing, you're just crying like a baby. Oh, my ward.
I'll be hitting you up like, hey, Jimmy, can you spot me 20?
Right. When a leg breaker shows up at your house, man, ready to beat the crap out of you. Where do you live?
PA, a little south of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, see, dude, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of leg breakers out there. Show up here like, oh, man. That's always a bummer.
That brings us to our main event, man. It got switched up. I was really looking forward to Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman, but we get a great one, man. Jorge Masvidal versus Kamaru Usman on a week's notice. What are you thinking for this one? This is going to be a fun scrap.
The disconnect here for me is fans seem much more viscerally excited, right? Like, whoa, amped up jazz about Jorge Masvidal, right?
Sure.
The DC said it should be 300,000 more buys because this. I've heard estimates as high as 500,000 because it's Masvidal. I think Burns is a tougher fight. Straight up, I think Burns is a way tougher fight.
We were talking about that last night because with Burns, man, that pressure wrestling that Usman uses, do you really want to go on the ground with Gilbert Burns? I don't.
World champ, yeah. They've trained together. He knows all your tricks. He knows what you do, and he's athletic. His gas goes forever. He's a very good medium range striker. He's very explosive. Jorge Masvidal, I think the first thing I'll say is I think Kamaru Usman would be the favorite against a prime 100% full camp Jorge Masvidal. I would still call Kamaru Usman the favorite. 6-day notice. I mean, the thing to me is not only the heat, but like Kamaru Usman, his last 4 fights, all of them 25-minute fights. That's 100 minutes of total fighting. He fought 99 minutes and 10 seconds. The guy wins long, grueling, difficult fights that can be ugly sometimes. Sometimes maybe the crowd's not that. He doesn't care. He'll grind you out. I was there. I called this fight against RDA, and RDA in between rounds was like, he was dying, dude. And then, Damian Maia could get nothing done against this dude. And it's just one of those things where he's not used to knocking guys out. I mean, he caught Colby Covington, but that's pretty rare. Usually he wins by decision. And this is exactly what he wants to do against a guy. And my jiu-jitsu instructor, trained with Masvidal before an American top team. He goes, his jiu-jitsu is okay. It's not, it's not Gilbert Burns. I don't want to take this guy down because he might tap me. He doesn't.
There's only like 3 Gilbert Burns in the world, so that's
right.
Really
exactly. Yeah. Chrome Gracie, one of those guy legends, right? Other than that, like, I don't think Usman has any hesitation taking him down and keeping him there. And also, what was he getting ready for? An explosive medium range striker on the feet. Gilbert Burns is explosive. He's fast. He's strong. Tends to fight at medium range. Doesn't have a great clinch. Not a great kicker necessarily, but a medium range guy with good hands. Well, that's what Masvidal is. Sure, Masvidal might be a little bit better, but a lot of Burns's training, getting ready for the fight, translates to Masvidal, right? It's a similar kind of striking style, a little bit better, but a similar kind of striking style. He's got to cut 20 pounds, which is not the end of the world. I mean, I know on ESPN did a thing with Stephen A. Smith, and they were like, oh my God. I'm like, dude, that's not even like, I've seen 20 pounds in a day.
Johnny Hendricks cut like 45 in like 4 weeks.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. So I'm not worried about him making weight. It's just, geez, you have 6 days to get ready for a guy who's a grueling wrestler who, remember, Masvidal spent a lot of his career at 55. He's not really a natural 170. He's not a big 170. Usman is a big 170. That dude is solid. So the irony of this is Usman gets paid more probably gets more eyes on him, gets more press, gets more recognition for beating, I think, a guy who doesn't match up as well with him as him stylistically. So it's weird. Fans like, yay, Masvidal. And I was like, I think Burns is a tougher fight, man. I really do. I think that would have been a bit more interesting. We know what he's going to do against Masvidal. And it's not like Usman's hands suck. I was, Masvidal's going to knock him out. I'm like, dude, Usman's got a hell of a chin and is a decent boxer in his own right. So the advantage Masvidal has isn't over the top, amazing, oh my God, Usman has no hands, he's going to get wrecked on the feet. I don't see that at all. So probably the best realistic outcome for Masvidal fans, if you're listening to this, is a great couple of rounds, right? A great 2 or 3 rounds, probably 4 and 5. Masvidal starts wearing down, and fans can say with a full camp he wins that, and he gets a rematch. Unless he knocks him out in the first couple of rounds, which I don't see any. And it's just possible. You knock down Darren Till, it is possible. But once that's over, now you're banking on doing enough to warrant a rematch, because staying at the top, I mean, if Usman just owns him, dude, it's hard to think about who's in his way. Wonder Boy is a hell of a fight. Colby Covington's a hell of a fight. There aren't many aesthetically pleasing matchups for Masvidal at 170. Sure. So it's hard for him to get back there unless he makes a really great performance, and then people go, man, with a full camp, you can win that, blah, 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 and he talks up a rematch. That's certainly a possibility. With all the X's and O's, when I look at them, they're all lined up in Usman's favor. And right now, the last I saw is a 3-1 dog. Is it still about that?
So right now, according to Bovada, Usman's minus 325, Masvidal's plus 250. I'm sure around fight time, you're going to see those odds drop a little bit because Masvidal's a little bit more of a household name, so people are going to bet on him. So then if you like Usman, that I would wait closer to fight time to put some money down.
If you're a shark, I would wait until right before fight time. I would throw $1,000 at it. Walk away with $300, whatever it might be. Like, I just think every tactical, and you got to look for these mismatches as a fight analyst, is fans just go, I remember when Royce Gracie fought Matt Hughes, right? Mm-hmm. And all these old men at this fight that I was watching, I was at a party, man, Royce Gracie, you don't know, Hughes is going to ruin him. You just know Royce Gracie. Like, you have no idea what? He's going to get killed. And I remember telling them, like, guys, you just are so disconnected from what's actually happening. And, people who bet on Conor McGregor against Floyd Mayweather, I thought they were insane. And it's that idea that certain fighters are more – their popularity is just so skewed with the X's and O's ability to win a certain fight. I'm not saying Masvidal's a bad fighter. I'm just saying all the X's and O's, in my opinion, favor Kamaru Usman.
And I agree with you. The one thing I think that's really changed Masvidal's career, because he hasn't really changed the way he fights a whole lot, is Masvidal was known at 55 for a guy who loses razor-thin split decisions. That's not going to be a factor here just because, like you said, with the short training camp. The thing I'm kind of curious with is Masvidal's counter wrestling's not bad.
Nope.
His jiu-jitsu is not bad. Is he at Kamaru Usman's level? I don't know. He is a little bit of a trickier striker because he's a little bit more of a veteran than a Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is, that classic guy who picked up striking. Masvidal's a guy who's known for striking. He's like Gilbert Burns' striking kind of reminds me of a much sharper Josh Koscheck, where it's a one, a hard over, two over the top, that kind of stuff. But the thing that's kind of interesting is, like I said, Masvidal's a veteran. And, Kamaru Usman's talked about on Rogan's podcast. He's 33. He's been wrestling for a long time now. He self-proclaims his knees aren't good. We saw him box up Colby Covington. Was that out of raw hatred? Because that's the first time we've seen Kamaru Usman not wrestle at all. He just came out and was like, I'm going to box. Was that out of like this hatred? Because if he tries to just box Masvidal, I think he can still win it because he has the better endurance from having a full training camp. It's just tougher because his striking's not bad. It's gotten a lot better, but his defensive boxing's not great.
He does get hit a lot.
He does.
Colby hitting, and Colby's not a hard puncher by any stretch of the imagination. Colby hit him plenty. To your point, I think he was up against another All-American. Remember, Colby Covington took, I think, 5th in the Nationals for Oregon State. Excellent wrestler. trying to take a guy like that down is going to cost you a lot of gas. And he knew he was fighting Colby Covington, who has a damn near endless gas tank. I'm not going to be inefficient chasing a double leg or a single leg all over the octagon and not getting it. Boxing was, I think, just a more efficient choice. I think it's the less efficient choice against Jorge Masvidal, personally. I think that's a big difference. This guy's not a Division I wrestler. This guy's not a standout. This guy didn't, win any state titles. So if I keep the pressure on him, he's going to waste a lot more energy defending my takedown than I am going for it. With Colby Covington, I think it's the other way around.
And I that is a really, smart claim. Masvidal is also a guy where he's flying high. You know what I mean? Like he's on, this is by far the biggest he's ever been. And we saw with like Ben Askren where he just doesn't care. He'll try anything. We saw with Darren Till, the first 2 seconds he ran across and just kicked him right in the balls. Like, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
he is somebody who you don't really know what you're going to get from Jorge Masvidal. He's not an elite athlete. He's a nice athlete. His fighting style, he's a really, really good kickboxer, but everything else, he's just very well-rounded. He's not elite anywhere else.
Right.
If this were a full training camp, I think it would be interesting. I agree with you 100%. Usman should be the favorite, just because, like you said, he is a tank. And like when he went against Woodley, he grinded him out for 5 rounds. I mean, I was like, okay, maybe this guy's so big he won't have the gas tank. Well, he did have the gas tank. He is just a big, strong man. But, Masvidal does, and it's more than a puncher's chance, but he does have that outside chance of being crafty, man. I don't know, setting up, maybe having him duck down, tagging him up a little bit. He shoots outside, which normally isn't Usman's game. He usually presses against the cage and takes you down, throws a flying knee, something like that. Other than that, it has to be Usman's to lose, you'd think.
3-1.
Yep.
I think it's incredible. Like everything you said right now, I agree with you 100% about if Masvidal wins, that's how he wins.
Sure.
I'd give that a 3-1, 4-1 chance.
Sure.
I'd give it that Hail Mary chance that he catches him. Remember, it's got to be early. I don't think this fight, Masvidal's going to have the energy to do much after 3.5, 4 rounds. Now, he could prove me wrong, but he's generally not. The only way Justin Gaethje beat Tony Ferguson on a short camp was he was incredibly efficient. He didn't go out there swinging for the fences, it was a very not Gaethje kind of performance. Will we see that from Masvidal? Maybe, but he's up against a superior wrestler who's not going to allow him to be on the feet long enough to just pitter-pat the jab and do all the efficient boxing things that somebody would usually do on a short camp. That's how I feel about it.
And I've heard some people throw out the Diaz thing. Well, Diaz came in and beat McGregor. Well, McGregor's a completely different fighter than Usman. McGregor's got that power and whatnot, but Usman, if he gets his hands on you, those 5 minutes of him just grinding you on top is so exhausting you can't even imagine. So that's a different 5 minutes than Diaz taking off the first round against McGregor. So it's a hard comparison. I love Jorge. He's awesome. You know what I mean? Obviously he's, more of a fan favorite than Usman. I'm just hoping it's exciting for however long it lasts. Because, even though Usman's not a huge finisher, we could just see him grind him out and then basically finish him just by Masvidal being dead tired, in the 4th or 5th. But yeah, man, I love this card. I'm excited. I was really bummed when Burns got bounced out. I was like, oh my God, like I was so looking forward to this card. And then they replaced it with Masvidal, and I was like, hey, at least like the main event's still on. Like I was just excited that, Usman didn't have to take this fight. You know what I mean? He stepped up. Masvidal stepped up. But yeah,
smartest thing he could have done, dude.
Yeah, you're right.
Usman, okay, a guy on 6 days' notice, a guy who's not going to stop my takedown, a guy who's not a world champion in jiu-jitsu, a guy, oh my God, a guy who's a natural 55er. Please back up the Brinks truck. I'll take this fight. I think it was the best moment right now of Usman's career is I can fight this guy who's generally pretty dangerous on short notice. Are you kidding me?
Sure.
What? Okay, I'll do it. That's and when he looks like a hero, and it's like, dude, made the smart play. I think Burns is much more dangerous. Dude, if you have a dangerous guy in front, what do you want? You want him unprepared. You want him on a short camp. You want him having to cut a lot of weight that week. All of the factors favor Usman. Smartest move to take this fight.
How do you think the Burns fight would have played out? Do you think he would have tried to box Burns, or do you think he would have pressed him up against the cage? Just out of curiosity.
I think he would have boxed him.
I think so too.
The problem is that, man, like everyone I've spoken to, and I train here in South Florida. I know people have trained with both of them. They're like, man, Burns is explosive, and they go, the problem is that as good as Kamaru Usman is, that natural explosion, Burns is just phenomenal at that, at medium range. So I think he would have tried to box him. I think he would have taken a couple and gone, let's try the clinch and do this. And because they know each other really, really well. I mean, that's a huge factor in this fight. So what I think Usman gets past Masvidal, and I think we see this fight down the road. Once he recovers from COVID and everything's, hopefully no long-term problems. He's young, he's strong. We see this fight down the road because I think it's strategically more interesting.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to see that fight run down, depending on how this plays out on Saturday. Jimmy, thank you so much for coming on. You want to plug your YouTube channel?
Steeler Nation, bro.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to go on somebody else's freaking, short nose pop. Forget that, man. Steeler Nation. Okay, cool. Catch me out on YouTube. Jimmy Smith MMA. That's all my social media as well. J Smith MMA on Instagram. I did a breakdown of this where I talk in depth about all this stuff. Go to my YouTube channel, subscribe, check it out. And I appreciate the invite, man.
Dude, always, man. You have open invite anytime. Jimmy Smith's the man. Thank you so much for coming on. And guys, if you click like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.